Namesake is a novel by Jhumpa Lahiri. It was first published in 2003. It is a tale of love, loss, family ties, reconciling with identity and the experiences of Indian migrants in America. Get your notepads ready because today, we will cover the historical context, summary, important themes and symbols of The Namesake. Before starting, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. The Namesake is an immigrant fiction novel that takes place over a period of 32 years and 2 generations of Indian immigrants in the United States of America from the year 1968 to 2000. The setting of the novel revolves around various places, notably in Calcutta, India, Massachusetts, Boston, and New York City. It is from the point of view of a third-person anonymous omniscient narrator. The rise in Indian immigration to the United States of America, triggered by new immigration legislation in 1965 and its expansion in 1990, forms a fundamental backdrop for Jhumpa Lahiri's debut novel, The Namesake. Born in the UK in 1967 to Bengali parents and later moving to the USA as a child, Lahiri draws from her own experiences as a first-generation Indian immigrant. The narrative explores the challenges faced by these immigrants and their children in the cultural landscape of the United States. Jhumpa Lahiri, originally named Nilanjana Sudeshna, adopted her nickname Jhumpa due to the ease of pronunciation by her kindergarten teacher in Rhode Island. Lahiri's complicated relationship with her identity, reflected in her Indian name, serves as a profound source of inspiration for Gogol's struggle portrayed in The Namesake. The Namesake is divided into 12 chapters and now we will discuss the summary in detail. In the year 1968, Ashima Ganguly, a Bengali woman, is in Cambridge, Massachusetts, preparing to give birth to her first child with her husband, Ashok. The couple got married in Calcutta, India, in an arranged marriage. Ashok was studying electrical engineering at MIT. Ashima felt lonely and missed her Indian home, so to feel better, she kept letters from her family and tried to make Indian dishes with the ingredients she could find. Flashing back to 1961, Ashok recalls a near-death experience in a train accident from Calcutta to Jamshedpur when the train's 7 bogies had derailed. Ashok, clutching a blowing page from the collected stories of Nikolai Gogol, was ultimately saved by rescue workers. Their son is born, and they await a letter from Ashima's grandmother for the official or good name, but the letter gets lost in the mail. As Bengali tradition dictates, the oldest living elder selects the child's name. Without the letter, they decide on a temporary nickname or pet name, Gogol, after the Russian author from the train incident. At the age of 6 months, Gogol is honored with a rice ceremony by Ashima and Ashok. Half a year later, as the Gangulys make arrangements for a trip to India, Ashima receives a distressing call from her brother, Rana, revealing that her father passed away from a heart attack. Ashima and her family alter their plans, opting to travel to Calcutta 6 weeks earlier than initially intended for the funeral. By 1971, they shift from Harvard Square apartment to a Boston suburb, eventually buying a house on Pemberton Road with no Bengali families nearby. Gogol starts kindergarten, preferring his pet name to Mrs. Lapidus, the school principal, despite his parents' insistence on his formal name being Nikhil. Ashima gives birth to a daughter officially named Sonali but nicknamed Sonia. And the family learns about the deaths of Ashok's parents and Ashima's mother through phone calls in the following years. On Gogol's 14th birthday, Ashok presents him with a birthday gift, the short stories of Nikolai Gogol. Despite his father's thoughtful gesture, Gogol is more engrossed in listening to the Beatles and fails to appreciate the literary gift. Ashok, attempting to share the significance of the author Gogol, starts recounting the train accident but halts, realizing Gogol's inability to comprehend. Gogol discreetly hides the book when his father leaves his room. The following year, the Ganguly family spent 8 months in Calcutta during Ashok's university sabbatical. In the fall, Gogol starts his junior year of high school, where Mr. Lawson, his English teacher, introduces Russian author Gogol's work, starting with The Overcoat. Gogol is horrified to learn the dreadful life biography of his namesake Russian author, Nikolai Gogol. At age 18, before heading to Yale for undergraduate studies, Gogol legally changes his name to Nikhil through the probate court during the summer of 1986. While at Yale, he struggles to fully embrace his new identity, dating Ruth for 2 years but grows distant when she goes to study in Oxford. The following year during Thanksgiving, while waiting for a delayed Amtrak train, Ashok informs Gogol of the reason behind his name and the train crash incident. Gogol asks his father, "Do I remind you of that night?" To which Ashok replies that you remind me of everything that followed. In 1994, Gogol resided in a small New York apartment as an architect in a Manhattan firm after he graduated from the architecture program at Columbia University. His romantic involvement with Maxine Ratliff, an art historian, introduces him to her wealthy parents, Gerald and Lydia, whose sophisticated and easygoing demeanor contrasts sharply with the conduct of Gogol's parents. Gogol finds himself increasingly drawn to their residence, eventually moving in at their place. Despite Ashima's request for him to join them before his father departed for a 9-month teaching fellowship at a university near Cleveland, Gogol opts for a brief lunch stop with Maxine on their trip to her parents' lake house in New Hampshire. Meanwhile, as Ashima peacefully addressing Christmas cards, she receives a call from Ashok at 3 p.m. from Ohio. Revealing he's at the hospital due to persistent stomach troubles, he tells her, "My stomach's been bothering me since morning." Concerned and unable to reach him for 2 hours, she contacts the hospital, only to learn from an intern that Ashok Ganguly, her husband, has expired from a heart attack, that it had been massive, that all attempts to revive him had failed. Gogol rushes to Ohio, identifies the body, and returns to support his grieving mother and sister in Boston. The house on Pemberton Road becomes a place of solace, with Sonia choosing to stay with Ashima for a while, and friends and family offering comfort during their mourning period. A year after Ashok's passing, Gogol ends his relationship with Maxine. Encouraged by Ashima, he reaches out to Mashumi Mazumdar, a familiar face from family gatherings, and a French literature PhD. Mashumi shares her journey of studying French literature in Paris, then relocating to New York for her American ex-fiancé, Graham. Following their engagement fallout, she took a semester off from NYU before meeting Gogol upon her return. Gogol and Mashumi begin a serious relationship, leading to their marriage in New Jersey in a big Bengali ceremony, largely orchestrated by their parents. Adjusting to married life in a small apartment, they visit Paris in March, where Mashumi has to present a paper at a conference. Gogol feels isolated as Mashumi seems more connected to the city. Unbeknownst to Gogol, after their first wedding anniversary, Mashumi engages in an affair with Dimitri Desjardins, a friend from college days and whose resume Mashumi finds at the university. Gogol senses something amiss in his marriage but remains unaware of the infidelity. A year later in 2000, before Christmas, Ashima, while preparing food for a party, plans to split her time between Calcutta and the United States and thus plans to sell her house at Pemberton Road. Sonia and Ben are set to marry in Calcutta, while Gogol and Mashumi decide to divorce. Gogol reaches the train station ahead of Sonia and Ben's arrival. Reflecting on the previous year, he recalls discovering Mashumi's affair with Dimitri during a train journey to Pemberton Road from New York. Despite spending the holiday at the Pemberton Road house as planned, Mashumi departed for New York the day after Christmas, and upon Gogol's return to the apartment days later, she had already left for good. Now, a year later, as he reaches the train station, Sonia and Ben arrive in his mother's car to take him to the house for one final visit as the house is sold. Amidst the arrival of party guests, Gogol retreats to his old bedroom and finds the book Ashok had gifted him years ago on his birthday. Back then, he had not appreciated it and hadn't read a single story. Now, he notices his father's inscription, "The man who gave you his name, from the man who gave you your name." Gogol delays joining the gathering downstairs with the camera, opting to sit and read The Overcoat. Let's discuss the important themes and key ideas of Lahiri's The Namesake. Obvious from the title of the novel, the most important theme is names and identity. The Bengali practice of pet names or daknam is used privately by family and friends, and good names or balonam is used formally. No parent ever called a child by his good name. Good names had no place within a family. Gogol's school admission experience highlights the conflict around his name, intended to be Nikhil at school and Gogol at home by his Ashima and Ashok, but Gogol resents adopting a new name. Associating it with a stranger, he is afraid to be Nikhil, someone he doesn't know. Who doesn't know him? His struggle with the uniqueness of his name intensifies at age 11, realizing it sets him apart, while on a school trip to a graveyard where he relates to old names on the grave headstones. The name Gogol is neither Indian, the country of his cultural roots, nor American, the country where he was born and raised. Another example of the distinction and the significance of the good and pet names within the Ganguly household is through the naming of Gogol's sister. Though Sonali is the name on her birth certificate, the name she will carry officially through life, at home they begin to call her Sonu, then Sona, and finally Sonia. Sonia makes her a citizen of the world. It's a Russian link to her brother, it's European, South American. The abundance of names for Gogol and Sonia in Calcutta reflects the entwined family relationships. Names become codes of family ties to signify whether they are related to their mother's or their father's side, by marriage or by blood, as during family vacations in Calcutta. Ashok becomes Mithu and Ashima switches to Manu. Various nicknames, like Sonia's goggles, Maxine being Max, and Mashumi being called Mouse by Dmitri signify the multifaceted worlds Lahiri's characters inhabit concurrently, causing internal division yet offering comfort. Gogol's identity conflict surfaces at a college party, prompting him to introduce himself as Nikhil to gain confidence. It hadn't been Gogol who had kissed Kim and Gogol had nothing to do with it. This exemplifies the interwoven interplay between names and personal identity in the novel. When about to go into labor, Ashima refrains from using her husband's name while calling for him to go to the hospital, as it's not the type of thing Bengali wives do since it's considered too intimate in Bengali tradition. When she was addressing Christmas cards, she signs their names, her husband's name, which she has never once uttered in his presence, creating a distance between his name and identity. Even after Ashok's death, Ashima avoids even in death to utter her husband's name, using pronouns like he and him instead. This reflects the charm of his name for his wife and the intimacy Ashima shares with her husband. Gogol and Mashumi find comfort in the familiarity it fosters between them, as Mashumi was aware of Nikhil as Gogol since childhood, while Nikhil the first time he's been out with a woman who'd once known him by that other name. They connect over their Bengali identities and the resulting confusion for Americans. Realizing their relationship aligns with their Bengali parents' expectations, an astonishing but reassuring realization. Gogol's identity struggle revolves around the strain between his family's Indian Bengali roots and his aspiration for an independent American life. His choices often reflect a desire to distance himself from his family's sway. While involved with Maxine's modern New York family, he finds an appealing substitute home, only to reconsider his roots after his father's death and decision to marry Mashumi. By the novel's end, Gogol embraces his past, symbolized by reading the book of his namesake's short stories given to him by his father. A gesture indicating a newfound acceptance of his heritage and the rich history embedded in the name Gogol handed down by his father. Lahiri consistently explores the themes of estrangement, isolation, and loneliness, particularly the feeling of being an outsider in a foreign land. Ashima's pregnancy, marked by difficulty, instills fear in her about raising a child in a country where she has no familial connections, and where life seems uncertain. She ponders about motherhood in a foreign land, a country where she is related to no one, where she knows so little, where life seems so tentative and spare. Gogol's birth feels incomplete, like most everything else in America, feels somehow haphazard, only half true, lacking the presence of close family support. Ashima longs to be back in India, amidst family care postpartum, and laments this much to Ashok after arriving back from the hospital after Gogol's birth. "I don't want to raise Gogol alone in this country. It's not right. I want to go back." Ashima, living far from relatives, struggles with suburban alienation. For being a foreigner, Ashima is beginning to realize, is a sort of lifelong pregnancy, a perpetual weight, a constant burden, a continuous feeling out of sorts. It is an ongoing responsibility, a parenthesis in what had once been ordinary life, only to discover that that previous life has vanished, replaced by something more complicated and demanding. Like pregnancy, being a foreigner, Ashima believes, is something that elicits the same curiosity from strangers, the same combination of pity and respect. Later, after Ashok's death, she wrestles with the feelings of loneliness and solitude and feels too old to learn such a skill. She hates returning in the evenings to a dark, empty house, going to sleep on one side of the bed and waking up on another. Ashima, before the party at the end of the novel, feels grief and deep loneliness and feels lonely suddenly, horribly, permanently alone, and briefly, turned away from the mirror. She sobs for her husband, expressing both impatience and indifference for all the days she still must live. Gogol, too, experiences detachment, realizing no one he knows in the world, in Russia or India or America or anywhere, shares his name. Not even the source of his namesake. Even in the company of Maxine or Mashumi, Gogol senses a familiar feeling of exclusion. Although temporarily moving in with Maxine's family, he somehow felt like an outsider, imitating the life of a modern American individual. Gogol, in his marriage to Mashumi, struggles rides with moments of alienation, questioning if he represents some sort of capitulation or defeat. Their trip to Paris accentuates his discomfort, wishing it were her first time to alleviate his sense of displacement. The sense of foreignness and displacement is linked to the next most important theme of the namesake, which explores the convoluted fabric of Bengali American identity. Diving into the generational cultural shift experienced by the Ganguly family. The novel is set against the backdrop of immigrant family dynamics, capturing the back and forth between the older generation's Bengali roots and the American-born children's evolving connection to their dual heritage. The Ganguly family's experiences in America provide a unique perspective as Indian immigrants, with Ashok finding delight and fascination in the unfamiliar American environment while prospering in academia. On the other hand, Ashima, deeply rooted in her past in India, resists the onslaught of American ways. Ashima misses her life in India as she preserves her letters and longs to go back after Gogol's birth. She finds Massachusetts cold, alienated and lonely, struggling to comprehend local conventions. Ashok's death prompts her to reflect on cherished memories in America, leading her to embrace a dual identity, simultaneously Bengali and American. As by the novel's end, she wishes to divide her time between Calcutta and America. Gogol, Sonia, and Mashumi signify the succeeding generation, born in America and naturally assimilated into American culture. Growing up with English as their native language and attending American schools, they find India to be a foreign land during visits, yearning for American food, customs, lifestyle and identity. They struggle with language barriers despite attending Bengali language classes, which astounds Ashok and Ashima as it never fails to unsettle them that their children sound just like Americans. Expertly conversing in a language that still at times confounds them, in accents they are accustomed not to trust. Gogol strives to distance himself from his Bengali roots, noticeable in his relationship with Maxine, where he seemingly trades his Bengali family for Maxine's stereotypically American one. Burdened by memories of the past and his Indian connection, Gogol believes that embracing his Bengali heritage hinders him from embodying the American identity he desires. It's only after Ashok's death that Gogol is compelled to confront his Bengali roots, realizing that his identity can be a blend of both American and Bengali, rather than mutually exclusive. Now, we will discuss the two most important symbols of Lahiri's novel. Trains are a recurring symbol in the namesake, featuring prominently with two pivotal train accidents. The first, a harrowing incident from Ashok's past, becomes a turning point in the narrative as he narrowly survives. The second incident involves an unknown person's tragic suicide on the train tracks during Gogol's journey home from Yale during his college days. Throughout the novel, trains play a crucial role in shaping characters' destinies. Ashok's near-death experience on an Indian train led to his migration to the United States and the pursuit of a career in electrical engineering. As the story unfolds, Gogol emerges as the central figure, regularly traversing on the Amtrak train between New Haven, Boston, and New York for his academic pursuits and to visit home. The recurrent symbol of trains serves as a poignant reminder of life's perpetual forward motion, beyond anyone's control, a sentiment echoed by Gogol in the last chapter of the novel. Noteworthy events, such as the loss of Ashima's grandmother's letter in the mail carrying Gogol's official name, Gogol meeting Ruth and discovering Mashumi's affair, unfold on trains, emphasizing their symbolic significance in the narrative. Trains symbolize movement, journey, and distance, highlighting the character's constant sense of displacement and division between multiple homes. Books hold a significant role throughout Lahiri's novel, starting with young Ashok's deep affection for them in the first chapter, and the novel ends with Gogol's unexpected rediscovery of the book gifted by his father more than a decade ago. Books, in the namesake, serve as historical records and bearers of names, like Mashumi's inscribed books from Graham or Dimitri and Ashima's notepad of addresses. Various characters, including Ashok, Ashima, and even Gogol, engage with novels. Ashok, in India, develops a passion for Russian fiction, while Ashima is captivated by English poets. In America, Gogol receives Nikolai Gogol's short story collection from his father, carrying significant symbolic value. Mashumi, a PhD scholar at NYU, uses reading both as an escape and a profession. A book gifted by Dimitri acts as a catalyst for her affair with him and the eventual divorce between Gogol and Mashumi. Moreover, the stories of Nikolai Gogol hold profound meaning, reflecting the trauma of Ashok's train accident and offering enticing tales that inspire him to explore the world. Gogol's name is derived from these stories, representing a connection he struggles with throughout his life. The novel concludes with Gogol leaving a party to read the Gogol stories his father had given him years ago, emphasizing the enduring influence of literature. Reconnecting with this collection at the novel's end also becomes Gogol's attempt to bridge the temporal gap with his deceased father, using fiction as a powerful tool for family bonding and understanding his father's character, forming a poignant link to the past. Hope you liked today's video, share and subscribe for more.